Now go to the European debate, and as spokesperson in climate there is a link with energy policies, of course, as certainly also now with the nuclear debates, which is starting at the European level. And I do think that after 25 years, when we had a lot of debate on nuclear, you can say that the debate on nuclear in Europe as well was declining. And that was partly because of just aging of the debate, but on the other hand also the climate issue was used by the industry, the nuclear industry, which is quite intensive in its lobbying efforts in making sure that because of the climate challenges we need nuclear, and that was also mentioned today behind this table. And I think that is what the nuclear industry is trying to call the nuclear renaissance. And I think most important is that for us Greens is to make sure that there is a big myth about the nuclear renaissance. Because if you look at the figures, at the data, then you understand why the nuclear industry is so aggressive in lobbying. Because they know they have a very small window of opportunity. For the coming 10 years, the nuclear renaissance has to happen, otherwise they will be out of business. And that's what they know. And how come? Look at the data. At this stage, power sector in Europe, around 30% is provided by nuclear and around 15% is renewables. So renewables is half the size of nuclear at this stage. If you look at the increase, the fastest increase in Europe, it's solar, it's wind, it's bioenergy. Then, looking at climate policies, we have in 2020 a target for renewables, which if you translate that into the power sector, in 2020, 35% of European power will come from renewables. Whereas in every baseline, if you look at projections, nuclear will be around the same 30%. So in 10 years' time, renewable will have surpassed the nuclear share in the European power sector. And this is what the industry knows. They know if we don't try to open up now a lot of new nuclear plants, in 10 years' time, renewables will have a bigger share in Europe and we will be out of the game. Because if you look at price development, that's of course another issue. The price development of nuclear is stable for years, for decades. The advancement in the technology is hardly happening. Of course, there's a lot of technology more at the scientific stage, but it has never implemented yet. So all the nuclear price curves are stable. Whereas where are the biggest increases in technology? It is in solar, it is in wind. And also Commissioner Hedegaard last week acknowledged that wind energy is cheaper than nuclear energy. And if you look at the development in the technology, we all know that in 10 years' time, solar will be competitive with nuclear. So also there, you understand why the nuclear industry is lobbying that aggressively, because they know in the share, in the pricing, in 10 years' time, if we don't have this so-called renaissance really achieved, we will be out of business. And that is the debate which we should have. It's not anymore that we have to explain as Greens why we are against nuclear. Now the nuclear industry, but also the governments promoting nuclear industry, have to defend why are they in favor. We all know it's a risky undertaking. We only are talking about the energy production phase, but if you look at the mining phase of uranium, if you look at how it is being developed in Russia, for example, to get the more uranium you can use for the energy production, but also if we go to the waste debate on nuclear, which we still don't have a solution to, or if you add all these items, it's very clear it is a dangerous, risky undertaking to shift to nuclear. We don't need it if you look at the price developments, and we don't need it if you look at the increase in shares of renewables compared to nuclear. So that is what we need to have a debate on. And I think as Greens we have a very strong position. we have a lot of vision for the longer term where we can show that Europe as a whole, because indeed there are countries who have problems maybe for achieving their own energy, but if you look at Europe as a whole, we can reach 100% renewables in the power sector in a couple of decades. And we can do that by phasing out nuclear. And that is, if we show our vision, that is the compelling thing that we should tell the others, is we don't need nuclear for this future. Then, of course, the debate on what do we need to achieve this vision. I think there are two really important issues to address at the European level, and that should be the debate of the energy vision for 2050. Focus on energy efficiency, on energy savings, because we all know if you don't invest in that, you have to import more energy, you have to work on alternatives for more energy, and you have to pay for more energy. So this is step one, efficiency, savings and savings. Because that is key, and that should be the core item of European policies at this stage. That is a problem, of course, because that's not the case. Because there's not really an aggressive lobbying in favor of energy efficiency, whereas you do have an aggressive lobby for nuclear, or for coal, or for gas. The other crucial aspect for our vision is energy infrastructure. If you want to go to renewables, you have to combine your solar potential, you have to combine your water, your hydro potential, your wind potential, your bioenergy potential, and therefore you have to invest in infrastructure as an EU. Also to make sure that all the European countries can benefit from this 100% renewable power sector. These two items, they need to be addressed now. Infrastructure and efficiency, and then indeed, and then we don't need this nuclear. Then, on the debate in Europe, to close off, because I'm at my 5 minutes, I guess. Yes, thank you. The phasing out. We do have at this stage the stress test. Commissioner Oettinger, after Fukushima, said we have to do a stress test for all the 143 reactors we do have in Europe. I think it will be very important for us Greens to make sure that it won't be the nuclear experts from the nuclear industry determining the criteria for the nuclear stress tests. Because then we know the outcome of this stress test. It's the nuclear industry advising how it is with the nuclear safety in Europe. I do think that this stress test is not needed if we do it like that. We have to have independent researchers, which is quite difficult, by the way, to find them in Europe, still independent researchers on nuclear, to make sure that we have independent and very good criteria on the 143 reactors, and making sure that the consequence of this stress test is really closing immediately the most dangerous ones, probably the most older ones, because half of these 143 reactors are older than 30 years already. And then, of course, also a plan to phase out the other ones, because some countries will have some difficulty with that, and I just mentioned France, of course, which is having 58 of the 143 reactors. So for France it's going to be a bit more difficult than, for example, the Netherlands, who has only one, although this government is planning to open a second one, which is of course going in totally the wrong direction, but that happens a lot with our government.